That's an Audrey Hepburn quote.
Yes.
Yeah, sure is. You know, I'm like, there's like a nice answer and then like a superficial answer too. Like, I'm a huge believer in choosing books by the cover because I feel like it always reflects what's going on inside. And I say this about people too, like, you know, you could, like, I'm super judgy, which is something I'm working on, definitely. I'm not saying be judgy. But, you know, you can kind of tell what kind of person they are by their face and by their facial features. And I feel like, you know, it's really true where if you want change to happen, it always comes from within, right? And I think the quote goes on to say, like, if you want beautiful lips, like, say sweet things and, you know, so on and so forth. And that it always comes from the inside, but it does reflect on the outside too. So I kind of like that, you know, there isn't this sort of hiding duality quality, like it all is part of a whole, and you know, it just be nice and you'll look nice.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 45 of the Amani Experience Podcast. For this show, we have Lisa Aihara coming to us from Fiber and Dye. Really enjoyed my conversation with Lisa. She's funny. She has a great personality. You can see it come throughout the entire episode. She's a risk taker. I mean, she left the comfort of Disney to pursue her own venture, so I respect that. And then she's got some really cool products. I'm particularly interested in her greeting cards. I'm going to have to order some, like I said on the show. So I know you're going to enjoy this interview. Please remember to subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred player on your phone. Also, leave us a rating. We appreciate all the feedback. If you want to reach me, you can email me at podcast@amaniexperience.com. And now, to the show we go. Thank you very much for listening. The trajectory of our guest today's career looks at first glance haphazard at best. After graduating from UCSD, which is University of California, San Diego, with a degree in creative writing, she had short stints as a newspaper reporter, editor, and copywriter, all while doing the freelance work in blogging as well as web and graphic design. She then sets on a course to build a digital marketing career over the next 7 years, completing her MBA at CSULB, California State University, Long Beach, and going on to work with companies like Sirius XM, Hulu, and most recently, Disney, heading up the online marketing strategy across social media, email, and e-commerce. Today, she is the founder and artist of Fiber and Dye, a design studio that helps brides, brands, and BFFs, I like that, celebrate moments in life they can't wait to share with friends. Whether it's a custom invitation suite to reflect their special day, visual identity that grows businesses, or a greeting card with a weird inside joke that brings friends together, Fiber and Dye aims to connect loved ones through designs that are unexpected, silly, oddly specific. Oh, and pretty. Bringing her experience as a designer and storyteller, our guest is excited to be her client's new designer friend to bring those moments to life. I would like to welcome Lisa Aihara to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
You're welcome. We are excited to have you too. Let's kind of unpack this bio here. There's a lot in here to talk about.
Lots of info.
Tell us about newspaper reporter, editor, and copywriter. What was that about?
Yeah, so I got my undergrad in literature and writing. I couldn't even be bothered to get an English degree, which I think is the one that gets like joked on for being useless. This is even more specific. So I really thought that I was going to write the next like YA dystopian novel that was going to be made into a movie. Oh. That was like the
Hunger
whole
Games.
thing. Yeah, Hunger Games. Yeah, I thought I was going to write the Hunger Games. But for some reason, like ever since I started, I really thought that passion, dreams were separate from career. So I thought that, I was going to write that book, but in order to do that, I needed a job to finance it. So kind of thinking about, what my background is, I kind of went into things that seemed sort of relevant to writing, right? So journalism, I was a reporter, assistant reporter over at a international Japanese newspaper, the LA bureau there. I also worked at a magazine,
Nice.
and then I worked at a sort of, what was it? It's like an ad company. They sold ads, so I wrote like copy for ads,
Okay.
as well as doing like little articles and stuff. All the while like blogging, thinking that I was also going to be a blogger, and like wanting to do design too. So from the beginning, I was kind of all over the place.
What made you decide to go and get your MBA?
That's another like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my life moment, where I was feeling burnt out from these writing, not writing jobs, right? So I kind of thought that, this is the career that I was going to go with and be doing sort of writing, but it like quickly became apparent that it wasn't what I really wanted to do. And if I was kind of going to pursue this career as purely a money-making thing, what better way to make money than be an accountant? So I really thought that I was going to be a CPA, and that's how I got into the MBA game. So I went back to business school, kind of cranked it out. Long Beach has this amazing program that you can crank out an MBA in a year.
Wow.
So it's not part-time, you're full-time sitting there for, I think, a whole year, like 10-week quarters, accelerated MBA, I believe they call it. So I kind of banged that sucker out. But while I was doing it, I kind of fell in love with marketing, and that's how the sort of second phase of my career started. It kind of felt like the perfect marriage of, wanting to write and wanting to tell stories, but in a business sense. It was the most interesting to me, at least, like amidst the classes on like negotiation, which I was not good at, and bonds and like finance. And I was like, ugh, but marketing was really fun for me, especially branding.
Right.
So I kind of went into that, and then got my first job as a marketing associate over at a nonprofit organization, and then from there kind of went into more digital marketing stuff.
Good. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Torrance, California,
All
so
right.
South Bay.
South Bay.
Born and raised, and even with all the schools, you can tell that I don't go very far from Southern California.
I mean, look at us right now. We're like in Manhattan Beach at our mobile studio overlooking the water, so why leave this?
Why leave? Yeah, it's seriously the best place to live.
It is very nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So you're South Bay native.
Mm-hmm.
Now you kind of your maybe entry into corporate America working for Sirius XM, then to Hulu, then Disney. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Sirius XM was actually a client. I worked at an agency. So what I didn't know going in was that there's these big companies who would outsource their marketing efforts. So there was an agency who just did email marketing for big companies, which was totally weird to me because I thought everything was in-house all the time. So that's kind of my introduction into this whole world of agencies and, having clients that you serve, and being kind of on the team but sort of also separate from them. So within that company, we had really big companies like, Sephora, Nordstrom, Sirius XM, of course, and then lots of other retail clients as well that we kind of service. And Sirius XM was one of my main ones. And I loved working with them because, one, I think it depends on the company too, but that particular company, the marketing managers were really, really inclusive of their agency folks, and we really felt like we had an ownership within the team. So not only did I get that chance to sort of feel like I was part of this internal team, but also had my own team on the agency side as well, where I got the introduction into, having like a structured, organized team, room for growth, like someone who was mentoring me. I had an amazing manager who kind of really showed me what being in corporate could be, like the great parts of it. And I really, really loved, like, not only did I learn about marketing, but all of the soft skills that is required to really succeed in that environment. So it was a fantastic experience. And then with Hulu and Disney, that was when agency folks call it going to the client side, where you kind of go into that internal team. So I kind of worked at Hulu, at Disney, heading up email marketing, and then also I kind of mentioned to the social e-commerce,
Right.
kind of growing that. there.
If you were to think back to when you were working at Sirius XM, Hulu, Disney, what were some of the most valuable lessons you learned that you carried over to your own business?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I think accountability is a huge one. Email marketing, what I think people don't realize, and all of the nerdy fellow email marketers out there would know, it's like writing everything in pen, right? When you hit that send button, there's no going back. Like social posts you can take away, or if you put something online you can take down, but you can't take away someone's email in their inbox. So when you make that first horrible mistake, which everyone kind of goes through, I think my very first mistake was I had sent like 50 million people a email duplicate. So they got 2 emails.
Ooh.
It is horrible. Like you kind of want to just like crawl into fetal position, like under your desk and die. But what was amazing was that, all the teams that I worked with, they were supportive. Obviously they're saying like it's a mistake, like, let's not do it again. But it wasn't anything like, me feeling like my job was in jeopardy, or that, I will never work in email marketing again or anything like that. It just really felt like this valuable lesson. And that's kind of what I took away from it. Like accountability, making mistakes, taking that ownership doesn't mean it's going to turn into a failure. It is a failure, but you don't have to leave it at that. Now it becomes like a way for you to grow and get better. And I think that that's something that's definitely missing a lot of times in the world too. Like people don't like taking accountability for their mistakes. So that's one thing that I try to always take with me, that, I don't pretend to know everything. I don't pretend to, be a one-stop shop or like the person that's going to solve all of your problems for you. But I'm going to try my damn best. And also if I mess up, then I will let you know. And I think that that's been really great in my sort of client business side right now, because building that trust is so huge, especially when you're trusting someone to bring something that is in your mind to life.
Right. I'm also curious, with the way that social media is now, where the algorithms change weekly on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So I've heard some smart people say that you don't really own your Instagram followers, your Facebook likes, but the one thing you own is your email list. So I'd ask for your perspective on that kind of thought.
Yeah, the big irony is having been in email marketing,
Exactly.
I actually don't have a big email marketing strategy right now. And I think one thing is, I've kind of gotten disillusioned a little bit just because of, the way that email marketing has become such sort of this aggressive tactic in the corporate sector. So maybe that's my reservation in kind of bringing that into my own business. But, I kind of go back and forth on that. It's probably not a very popular opinion for me to say, like, do people really need to hear from you every week, on a weekly basis, especially with my own business, just because I have so many different business units kind of going, like, are the greeting card people really going to care what I'm doing about weddings, and vice versa. And I couldn't really think of a way where all that kind of mashes up. But, if you have if you just have a product-based business, it's cheap, like really cheap. And it's such a great sort of marketing tactic in that sense. But it gets saturated really fast, and you kind of bore people really fast too. So I don't know that you own anybody ever, might be the way that I kind of think about it. And all you can do is sort of get your message out there, see what sticks. But email is definitely one great channel to do it.
Right.
I don't know that it's like the holy grail and that's going to solve all your problems, though.
Good. I appreciate your perspective. Thank you. So I understand you were ahead of the game while you learned Photoshop at age 10 or 11. Talk to us about what were you doing at age 10 to be learning Photoshop?
My dad was a computer geek. So he was one of those guys that always had like an Apple computer in the house. We never had a PC growing up. And so I thought that Apple, like Macs, were the only computers in the world. And he always had like Photoshop in there. I don't know what he was using it for. He was a musician, so I guess he just liked graphic-y stuff. But yeah, because PCs were so prevalent, no one made games for Macs, right? Like back in the day when I was growing up, like, all Macs had was that brick game,
Right.
if you ever remember. So for fun, if I wanted to be on the computer, the only thing I had going was Photoshop. So I would kind of like doodle on it, like in the same way that people doodled on Microsoft Paint, and kind of like learn like how to do things. And I was like, oh, this is really cool, like distorting images and whatnot. So I would kind of dabble in it. And then once like the internet happened, which happened in my lifetime because I'm old.
Very young, but keep going.
Like MySpace and, Zanga and all of those names that we don't hear anymore. Coding became a thing. So like if you wanted this schnazzed up MySpace, then you better know how to make some little icons and then learn how to code it so that it's like falling stars from like so it's so like 1990s, but yeah, in early 2000, that's kind of how I started and taught myself how to do graphic design as well as web design.
Cool. So you're ahead of the game. That's cool. What kind of musician was your dad or is your dad?
He was a drummer starting out,
Okay.
and then he went into producing.
Got it. So, as a DJ and a producer, I have love for any musician, so I have to ask. And then I also understand that are you still a watercolor artist? Do you still paint?
I do. So watercolor painting actually is a new thing for me.
Okay.
It's something that I've always wanted to do, but I'm kind of type A and really like strung tight and like a perfectionist sort of. So that's why Photoshop works really well for me because you can like undo and like keep perfecting everything. But watercolor is so opposite of that, right? And it kind of goes against what is my basic instinct to like want to fix everything. Like really it's like a one stroke game, and if you keep touching it, it actually gets worse than it was. So it's something that I picked up as I was kind of going into my late 20s, like about to turn 30, and I was thinking like, oh, like what kind of person do I want to be? Like what is this? And it kind of had this like meditative quality to it where you kind of learn these like life lessons of like, oh, you have to let go and you have to let the paint and water do its thing, which is like super infuriating when you think about it. But when you see it actually happen, it kind of, calmed me down a little bit and made me like chill out a little bit more. And yeah, now I'm just in love. Like I just can't stop doing it.
Interesting. Who's the famous watercolor artist that we see when he's drawing the pictures on the TV and at first it's like a blank page and it ends up being like a landscape?
Oh my God, I've never seen that.
I'll send
That
that
sounds
to you.
amazing.
There's this guy. I don't know if he's still alive, but I'll send you that. It's amazing. He used to be on PBS and they have a 30-minute show and he'd start blank canvas and go. I'll send that to you.
Okay, amazing. Yeah.
So the watercolor artist, and then we have fiber and dye. You started that like in August 2016 approximately, so we're coming up on 2 years.
Yeah.
Where does the name fiber and dye come from?
So when I was doing all of these like side gigs ever since starting working, I have like a graveyard full of names that I've had for like my blogs and like these brands that I thought I was going to start. And like, at one point my mom and I were going to start like a dog scarf company too. So again, like a crazy like plethora of names. And what always happened was like I would pick a name and I would like it, but it just seemed a little too specific or like didn't seem like it would stick. And I knew that I was going to be all over the place. Like that's just my life. So I wanted something that kind of felt boiled down. And for me, I felt like no matter what I did with this new endeavor, I was always going to have something on paper and that I was going to always either write something or paint something. So fiber, paper, and then dye, paint dye.
Well done. I like it. I'm curious to hear what other names are in that graveyard. I'm
Let's
sure there's
see.
some crazy ones in there.
Yeah, I have a blog called Tickle, which is like, it sounds so bad. Like, I bet that's like a dating site now, Tickle. Little Rotten Beasts was the dog scarf / dog blog name, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
The bad ones in there.
I could be a customer for the dog scarf,
Yeah.
My young or older girl dog, female dog, she might look good in one of them, so
They
we'll keep
always
that
look
in
good.
mind.
Yeah, I'll bring it back.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
In your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
based on today's business environment, what's important for creative professionals such as yourself, myself, to succeed?
I think, corporations are like getting bigger and they are kind of merging. and they're getting to a point where you really can't scale at their rate, right? I mean, like, even companies are complaining about other companies screwing them over. Like, Amazon is completely changing the game, especially in the e-commerce space, where so many, even big companies are saying, like, we can't really, compete with that sort of customer demand that Amazon has kind of trained them to have. And so I think with creative professionals, like, the secret really is just go small, right? Like, I say that, and then, like, I kind of don't love, like, the whole, like, niche thing. Like, you have to find your super specific niche and that one person that's going to love you. Like, that seems a little too specific for me, but something in the middle, right? You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's totally okay. You're not going to serve, like, a mass community of people, and that's okay too. Like, you just have to find what it is that you're really good at, that you can really do well, and that people would come to you for, and kind of find really that focus point. There's this one documentary that I saw on Netflix about, like, dairy farmers, and I think which is a weird example, but it kind of illustrated this point too, where these big companies, there's probably only like 2 big milk companies who are kind of doing all this thing, and to really compete with that, you just have to be, like, organic, or you have to have this specific brand, or have this specific point of view. Like, having that perspective, I think, is what is going to differentiate you, and that's really the playing field that you have to work with. And it might feel like it's such a small piece of the pie, but the world is so big that, that small piece is going to be enough for you, I think.
Yeah, I agree. What was it about August 2016 that made you want to go out and kind of establish your business and your brand in your niche? Like, what was it? Why did you decide to leave corporate and take the leap?
So that was actually when I turned 30.
Okay.
So it was the big 3-0. I actually was still working when I started Fiber and Dye, and it was, again, going to be another side gig situation. It started as kind of a way for me to keep sane during my work hours too, like, knowing that, I had this other thing that I could work on when I got home, or, over the weekend, that I wasn't going to be completely consumed by work only. And it just felt like a really good milestone year. Like, I was kind of thinking, like, what do I want to give myself for my birthday? And I thought, nice things, or, like, commemorative things, like, maybe like a pen that I'll use forever, which, is still a nice gift for myself. But I was like, if I'm going to bleed money into this thing anyways, then may as well do it for my birthday, and know that, I took this leap and made this sort of creative outlet for myself. So I was like, slapped some stuff on a website, launched it on my birthday, and now the business and I share a birthday, so it's kind of fun.
Most people buy maybe, a fancy dinner out for their birthday, or concert tickets, a trip. You started a company on your birthday.
I sure did. Just threw some money at it and see if it sticks.
And then once you started, when did you realize that this is going to be something bigger than you thought, and, like, totally legit, and you could actually do this full time? When did that happen? What was the turning point?
It hasn't happened yet,
okay.
which is the funny thing. I wish that I had this, like, sparkling moment story for you, where I was like, I woke up one morning and realized I didn't have to go to work anymore because, this thing was taking off so much. It just so happened that, I was kind of ready to move on from the position that I had. And, I had this thing going. So I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to have another job lined up when I leave. So I left the company, and then I had Fiber and Dye going. And, to be completely honest, I probably didn't treat it with the same respect that I should have been for the first year. I kind of, probably treated it like a break, like a fun hobby still. And I didn't really realize that until my husband, we were out to dinner, and we were talking to the chef. It was this, like, fancy thing. And he was kind of explaining to him, like, what I do. And he was like, oh, yeah, she's kind of just in between jobs right now. And, like, at one point I was, like, offended. But then at the same time I was like, but that's true. Like, that's how he sees it, because that's what he's sort of perceiving in my everyday. And I was like, okay, so that definitely was a turning point to take it more seriously. I've started taking it more seriously, but I still don't know if it's big enough yet, and I'm kind of still trying to work that out, but it's the most rewarding thing that I've done. So it's kind of a balancing act in that sense, where I don't know yet. I hope that it will be big and exciting and enough to sustain me, but yeah, we'll kind of see how it goes.
We will. I have confidence in you.
Thank you.
It's going to work out better than you imagine.
Oh, that'll be the dream.
Why do you love what you do and working and having your own business, and why do you love that?
I think with creating something and designing, painting, it's such a personal endeavor, right? It's hard to separate yourself from it, which you are supposed to do, and you're not supposed to take it personally when you get feedback or criticism or what have you, but it, can't really control it. These are like my babies that I'm putting out into the world. And when I see like a client just smitten over it, or when I see someone pick up a card and just laugh out loud and say this is perfect for, Julia, because they have a friend in mind that it's perfect for, or when, I see a client kind of like put all of the logos, slap it into everything that we created together, and they're just so proud and they feel like they own it and that they've helped create that with me. It's just crazy rewarding, like to think that, one, someone likes what I do, and two, that I get to be part of this moment with them where they're celebrating something, and I kind of get to be a part of that.
Good. And then on the other end of the spectrum, what is something that scares you?
The future, definitely. We just kind of talked about too of, is this going to really be a thing? It's really scary, especially now. So I'm actually expecting.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're scared shitless.
Tell us how you really feel.
I know. And that's definitely put things into perspective, right? Where I've been, making career decisions and decisions to start a company kind of based on what I want to do and how I felt that I could take ownership of my life. But now I have this thing that, is going to be completely dependent on us to take care of. And so when I think about that, do they get to go to college? Do they get to go on family vacation? What does that look like? And that sort of financial security and making sure that I have enough to be able to provide for my family is something that is definitely scary and kind of makes all of the fun parts like back into reality to see if this is something that I can do. But we'll kind of figure it out. Like, it always works out in the end is my big philosophy about stuff. So, we'll kind of see.
Okay. If I was to ask you to summarize Lisa in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
Let's see. I'm a jack of all trades. I do a lot of things decently well, but nothing like super excel in. I'm very emotional. I'm a family girl. And I am a homebody that you can't drag out of the house ever unless it's for a podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good summary. Now your space, because you do so many things, we'll say like graphic design, kind of website design, branding. We'll say branding is very crowded.
Yeah.
How do you distinguish yourself and rise above all the noise and competition?
I think, especially with art, like you kind of quickly realize that you're not going to be the best at anything, right? Like there's always someone who is either like just a master at the watercolor art, or is just like thinks of these layouts that are just like crazy great. Like there's always someone who's going to blow your mind. But what I do have going is just me, essentially, like my personality and sort of the way that I approach work. And, I think that's why the whole sort of like wanting to be your designer friend is like a huge thing for me. It's really the way that I approach every project, the way that I want to work with you, and the way that I want to sort of solve problems with you, learn how to work with you, and make the experience as fun as possible. And I think that that's something that I can sort of have different And it's kind of fun because I have the three like different sort of businesses going, you know, each of those different legs actually showcases like a different part about me that they get to see. Like, you know, they get to see my sense of humor when they're looking at the cards, even though they might have come from me for my wedding stuff, you know, and when they're coming in from when they look at my wedding stuff, they could see that I could do like pretty watercolor flowers too, not just like silly cartoon animals that I do on my greeting cards. And then with the branding stuff, they kind of get to see like, oh, I guess she like knows business marketing stuff too,
True.
kind of thing. So I think like, you know, as sort of clustery and kind of haphazard everything has been, like the three different things that I do now kind of have settled into sort of the different facets of what I've been growing, and I'm kind of really proud of the way how that makes this like weird, unique mix of things.
Good. Yeah, and tell us the three different kind of businesses that you have.
Yeah, so I have the stationery line. They're mostly greeting cards. They have silly puns and also profanity all over the place. I have the wedding,
Yes.
custom wedding invitation suites. So we do like watercolor and then like we print, assemble for you. I also do calligraphy, so I can like,
Yeah.
you know, do the envelope addressing, and then the branding, business branding.
Right.
So doing everything from logo to sort of like the complete visual identity to even like how to position your brand within the marketplace is something that I love working with people on.
That's an excellent collection of services. Well done. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
This is one of my favorite questions. I love this so much that I actually did a podcast that's on failure only too. You know, and I think we talked a little bit about it before too, how like the whole accountability thing of like, I just love that when you fail, like you get to kind of grow from that. But my favorite failure moment is the fact that I haven't had one yet. And I think that's a huge sort of underside on my part, that I feel like, you know, when we were talking about how like it was like I was treating this sort of part-time, I feel like I really haven't been showing up a lot. Like I haven't had that face plant like on the mud, like, you know, about to just die kind of failure yet, because I don't think that I've sort of been all there, right? And so I think that's something that I'm not proud of. Like that's not, you know, it's easy to say like, oh, she's kind of been like gliding it through, but that's, you know, that's not the way that I want to do it. So I definitely want to kind of have that moment and have that sort of like debilitating, you know, fetal position under the desk moment with my business, so that I can kind of grow out of that too. So more to come.
So to be continued.
Yeah.
So even though you haven't had much failure, you have had some level of success. Because of that, how do you handle your critics, or the haters as we call them?
I'm not big enough to have haters yet.
Don't sleep.
Well, we'll see. I do have a thick skin, which helps too. And I think my whole philosophy on, you know, I'm not trying to be everyone's cup of tea, which I think helps a lot in that sense where, you know, and I don't like everyone either. So it's only fair that it goes both ways. But yeah, I would love to see someone say something like mean about me and think like, how I would react to that.
I wonder. Let's see.
Yeah.
Well, we won't say it now, but we'll keep an eye out. and
Yeah,
see.
in like the comments section of like the post, maybe they're gonna be like, "Holy crap, this girl," and I'll be like, "Oh, there it is."
You've arrived.
Yeah, and I'll like it.
That's funny. Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, you know, so during like my corporate stints, for some reason, I always found myself in this position where I was somehow working like 12-hour days and like coming home exhausted and just like completely burnt out, like on the couch, can't be bothered to talk to anybody, can't be bothered to eat dinner even. And it was particularly bad in my last position, where I was coming home super grumpy, like just not a pleasant person to be with. And we were newlyweds then, me and my husband. And so the way that I got through it was actually him, like like kudos to him. He's like the most patient guy that I know, and we've been together for a long time, so he kind of knows me. And he was just like, what are you going to do about this? Because one, you're making me feel down because you're so annoying right now. And, you have to do something about this. And so I like finally kind of said, okay, well, there's like different things that I can do. He says that this always happens to me because I'm a pushover and I can't say no and I can't ask for things. So I was like, okay, well, let's see what I can do. It's like, can I ask for, a better situation? Probably not, because I'm a pushover. Then I could just kind of leave. So it's kind of what I did. And, I think the takeaway from that is that I do wish that I had it in me to try to make the situation better for myself. It just didn't seem possible at the time, just because of sort of, the type of personality that I had and the type of environment that it was. But, if it happened again, I would like to kind of say like, okay, maybe next time I play the strong, independent woman role and be like, ask for things or, demand change and whatnot.
Okay. Props to your husband. You want to give him a shout out?
Yeah, we've been together since we were 17.
Okay.
We've grown up together pretty much, and he's a good kid. I guess we'll keep him around. That's Steven.
What's his name? Steven. Thanks,
yeah.
Steven. Good looking out.
Yeah.
Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
My mom and my sister. So I clump them as one because us three are kind of like this three musketeer growing up. We did everything together. We're really, really close. And, we're all very similar, which is sometimes the source of all of our arguments and whatnot. But they're also really, really different from me. Like, they have all of these qualities that I wish I had. And so they were able to kind of show me that, even though we're similar, they had these other qualities that I can sort of aspire to. Like, my mom is the most selfless, caring, loving person that I know. Like, which turns into smothering and is completely infuriating, but I just love her. And my sister is the most dedicated, loyal, hardworking, like, just toughest girl that I know, and which is also infuriating because she's like, get it together. And I'm like, no, I can't do it like you. And it's just infuriating. But like, yeah, I think without my family, I definitely wouldn't be where I am or who I am.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to read a quote that you said previously, and I want you to explain kind of your thought process for sharing this quote. You said, if there is one person out there you'll be able to touch with what you create, then that's the only reason you need to keep creating.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe you found that thing. Yeah, I think, it's that whole, like, seat at the table thing, right? Like, whether you're worth doing what you're doing when there's so many other talented people. And I think the way that I rationalize it is that, if you have that one person who felt like, this is, the card that I've been looking for all my life, or, this is the suite that I wish that I could have created, but I couldn't. Like, just having that one person is enough to do what you do. So, if there's anyone who's thinking like, oh, I wish I could do, something creative too, but I'm not that good, or, like, oh, there's so many other people who are doing it better, why me? Like, yeah, you, because you're a different person from all of those people. And even if it seems like they're better, that's a relative subjective term, like, there's going to be someone who is waiting for you to do something. So I think that's enough motivator to just, take a leap and go for it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about the podcast. For each episode, if I can touch one person that maybe is scared or worried about leaving their corporate job, and they hear your story and say, oh, I want to do something similar to what Lisa's doing, then mission accomplished. That's my goal. So I agree. Oh. Let's see here. When you were 21, you were in San Diego, correct? Still at school?
Still at school, yeah.
So you're in San Diego. So we're going to travel back and talk to 21-year-old Lisa.
Oof.
And what kind of advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
I think about this when I see other younger people too, but like, I just want to tell everybody who's that age that they're just perfect the way that they are. Like, I felt like I was so worried about everything and just thinking like, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not outgoing enough, I'm not funny enough. Like, you just feel like this empty, void of a person who just needs to fill up with whether it's products or other people's advice or other people's quotes and words. But, I just want to tell them, like, you're fine, you're perfect. Like, you are much better off right now than you will be in 10 years. So just don't even worry about it, which is really funny, right? Because, like, as you get older, you get more confident. But then you were definitely better off back then. Like, I wish I had the confidence that I have now back then. And I feel like I would have, like, ruled the world or something.
Agreed.
It's too bad. Man, youth is wasted on the young and wisdom is wasted on the old, for sure.
Great quotes. I agree. Kind of a nice segue is, what is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
This is kind of a sappy one, but
we like sappy.
Yeah, sappy is good. It took me a long time to kind of understand that love wasn't something that you just get, and that it's something that's earned and that you need to deserve every day. And that kind of just goes into, whether it's what you love to do or the people you love. I think I've grown up really taking for granted the people who were around me and loved me, or wondered why, people who weren't around wasn't around, or, always wondered, do I deserve this person? Do I deserve, to be loved? Do I deserve to be with them? And, as you kind of get older and realize, like, one, you don't, like, give as much fucks anymore, which is also a great place to be, but also kind of realize that everybody who's around you don't have to be there if they didn't want to, and they choose to, and they choose you every day. And that's definitely shaped, the way that I view myself, that, I'm worthy and that I'm, someone that's worth sticking around for, but also that, I have to show that with the people around me too. And, even with business stuff, corporate, with my, current and ever now, it always started with people and the way that I sort of felt within my community, within my family, and that's really kind of given me that sort of strength to, like, go for it and just kind of do things and, be ready to fail or be disappointed because I had that home base. And I think knowing that home base was what I needed all this time to be able to do all the things that I wanted to has been, like, a huge lesson for me.
And as a follow-up, what have you done to make sure that your home base, as you call it, is full of positive and kind of people that are good for you?
I make sure that, like I said, it's kind of similar in that sense too, where, like, I don't like everyone either, and not everyone likes me either. And so I think stopping to, like not caring to keep up acquaintances anymore, or, not caring too much in social situations to try to, like, be accepted all the time or to say the right thing all the time. Be the person that, that they want you to be, which I think I had always been perceptive of. I was, like, the firstborn daughter, right? And the running joke is that they're always the good girl because they kind of know exactly who they need to be in certain situations. And kind of separating off of that and saying, like, okay, well, who's the person I want to be, and who are the people who would accept me for that person and would love that person. So I don't have that many friends, which, is totally fine because all the friends that I do have, like, if I was in a crisis situation, they would come help me. So that's all I really need.
That's all you need. Yeah. Amen. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence would be, I like to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
I think I just want to be your designer friend, like, whether that kind of encapsulates the fact that I want to talk about your weird inside jokes in a card, or I want to make sure that you feel like your wedding day is the most important day for me too, or that your business is my baby as much as it is yours. I always want to have this sort of camaraderie and relationship with the people I work with, and make sure that they know that they're loved and that this is kind of their home base too when it comes to what they're trying to do.
Well said. Well said. What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
I started eating breakfast, which is very positive.
I would say yes,
yeah,
correct.
It's a positive thing. Habits are really hard for me. I keep like reading these things about like, oh, it takes 21 days, like you just have to try. But the only thing that I do every day is like sleep and eat, pretty much. So I'm trying to do breakfast. I'm also trying to incorporate journaling a little bit more.
Good.
Haven't written in forever. And I was thinking the other day, like, do I even remember how to write anymore? So I kind of want to start doing that too. So that's a new one.
There you go.
Be on the list.
That's a good one. You spoke about reading. Mm-hmm. We're voracious readers here on the Money Experience podcast.
I love that.
If there is 1, 2, or 3 books that you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and pick them up immediately and start to read them, what books would they be?
I've been recommending Dr. Brene Brown's work to anyone who would listen to me. I just absolutely love her. And I poo-pooed it in the beginning because, like, it's kind of like self-helpy, and then I didn't know anyone around me who was like into that stuff, but my best friend recommended the audiobook of The Power of Vulnerability to me, and that's kind of how I got into her work. That audiobook is actually, I think, like a recording from her seminar or something, and I just love the way that she speaks. So if you haven't heard of her, then that would be my first recommendation. She talks about, showing up, being vulnerable, being yourself, and knowing that that's worthy, and then kind of have evolved her work into how that translates into relationship, how that sort of executes in a failure situation, so on and so forth. So just kind of go down that list, definitely. And then another book that I just loved was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. That's like my desert island book. That has always been my desert island book since I was like in 7th grade, which I had no business reading it when I was that age. But yeah, it's really shaped a lot about, how I view the ultimate sort of like work ethic, or like the way that someone would approach their profession, their passion, which is funny because I've done like the complete opposite, because I knew that I couldn't be that sort of ideal, and I was like, oh, well, I'm a Peter Keating, so I'm just gonna go do this. But I think she's better known for like Atlas Shrugged, but for me, The Fountainhead is much better. Yeah.
Great suggestions. Yeah. Thank you. So I saw another quote that you mentioned, and I want to kind of get your perspective. You said, and you quoted somebody who said this, but you spoke about it. You said, if you want beautiful eyes, look at beautiful things. Why did that resonate with you?
That's a Audrey Hepburn quote.
Yes.
Yeah, sure is. I'm like, there's like a nice answer and then like a superficial answer too. Like, I'm a huge believer in choosing books by the cover, because I feel like it always reflects what's going on inside. And I say this about people too, like, you could tell, like, I'm super judgy, which is something I'm working on, definitely. I'm not saying be judgy. But, you could kind of tell what kind of person they are by their face and by their facial features. And I feel like, it's really true where if you want change to happen, it always comes from within, right? And I think the quote goes on to say, like, if you want beautiful lips, like, say sweet things and, so on and so forth. And that it always comes from the inside, but it does reflect on the outside too. So I kind of like that, there isn't this sort of hiding duality quality, like it all is part of a whole, and that, it just be nice and you'll look nice.
This is true. This is true. Are you a baseball fan?
I used to play softball.
Okay.
And my grandpa was a professional baseball player.
Okay.
And those are just random facts to throw at you and distract you from the fact that I watch it sometimes with him, but... Yeah.
Well, so you understand this concept. This is like a newer question that I've added to the repertoire.
Okay.
If, we'll say softball. Say you come up and you're playing some softball and they're going to play your walk-up music. What song would you pick as your walk-up music?
Oh, that's such a good one. Oh, my God. It would have to be something really embarrassing, like a Taylor Swift or a Kesha song. I think maybe like the new from her new album, Kesha, I'm a Motherfucking Woman, or I forget what the title is, but that's what the the chorus goes.
All right,
Yeah.
that's your walk-up song. You know, that's a new one. So
I am notoriously like the lover of trashy music. Like my friend loves music, and she tries to like send me these like good songs, and I'm like, you're gonna listen to Kesha, right? And Taylor Swift.
So we're kind of coming to the close of our interview, but
Okay.
there's a couple more questions.
Cool.
We're going to kind of make believe we're standing over top of a cliff. We're looking back over your life, and you're going to pick a couple of defining moments so far. What defining moments come to mind immediately?
Definitely when I started college. It was the first time that I was kind of away from home. It's, you know, tales all this time. You're like, oh, you know, you meet so many different people from different walks of life, like the whole thing. And also when I turned 25, I, for some reason, hit like quarter life crisis super hard when that happened. I think it was, you know, also like the recession, like no one had jobs and no one really like knew what they were doing, and I kind of felt completely and utterly lost, like for the first time. Like up until that point, I felt like, you know, as you're going through school, especially when you're growing up in like a Japanese American home, like my mom was just like, well, you know, you have these things that you just do, and it's like a checklist of go to a good, like get good grades in school, high school, so that you could get to a good, you know, school, go to college, like get a degree, and then, you know, you get a job, and then call it a day, like, and it just wasn't working out like that. So I finally felt like, oh wow, like this isn't how life works. Like I have to try to figure it out. Like it's more like being lost in a forest with a map and trying to figure
Right. Yeah. Good analogy.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, so that's what I have to do. And then definitely when I turned 30, just because of the whole fiber and dye happening thing. And then right now, too, because I've got this parasite growing in me now that I have to try to take care of. And it's like, I love this current stage in my life because it's sort of strengthened, you know, how I feel about family and how it's one of the most important things in life. And I'm just so thankful about all the people that I have around me who are just like either celebrating with me, being super anxious to know if it's a boy or girl. It's going to happen next week.
Okay, the reveal is next week.
Dying to know, and just, you know, there for me and supporting me. And it's just, yeah, I'm just so happy that this kid is going to be able to come into this like loving place, and, you know, hopefully I'll not screw them up.
Yes, you won't. Fantastic. You won't screw them up. We have confidence in you.
Ooh.
How can people find you online, social media, etc.?
Social media, etc. So everything is spelled out Fiber and Dye, FIBERANDDYE. I like to spell that dye because my printer actually thought that I was DIE for the longest time, and I sound like a biker gang, which is kind of cool too. But yeah, DYE. I have a website, fiberanddye.com, and then I'm mostly on Instagram.
So your Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back into Twitter. Like, I think I'm funny, so I should like be tweeting some funny stuff, which I don't do.
Right.
And Facebook has been super annoying for me, so I'm trying to get back into it, but it's like,
Twitter's good. Be funny on Twitter. As long as you think you're funny, that's the battle right there.
You know, it's just me, but we'll see.
Cool. Well, we want to thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate your wisdom. I love your work. They're funny cards. I'm going to have to get some for some friends of mine coming up. So, you know, I appreciate your work and how you took the leap, and you're continuing to persevere as, you know, life happens. So keep going. We're happy to be acquainted with you. And we always let our guests leave the show with any last minute words of wisdom or advice. So I'll say thank you again, and we'll let you take us home.
Oh, my goodness. I don't consider myself wise at all, so that's really sweet that you say that. Yeah, you know, it's like, everything is so scary, right? Like, the state of the world is scary right now, you know, especially if you're taking a leap in something that's really scary. You kind of wonder, do I have enough time, money, resources, like, to do anything that I want to do? But I think the one thing that you just have to remember, and kind of trust your gut in is, know your personality, know what it is that you need, and know that there is a spot for you in this big, scary world where there's all of the right things in there mixed in to make this cocktail of happy that is going to be, something that only you can go for and take for yourself. So go out there and make the universe your bitch.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.